Joining this brief presentation on Minneapolis City Futures and what Minneapolis City Futures is going to look like as we enter 2022. So for this presentation, I'll briefly talk about who is Minneapolis City Soccer Club, what is the Futures program, what is the Futures program going to look like in 2022, and we'll close out the presentation with how players can join Minneapolis City Futures. So Minneapolis City Soccer Club is a community-based and member-driven 501c3 nonprofit organization run by primarily an all-volunteer staff. This pyramid is a representation of what the soccer operation looks like. We have two different pools of players as we enter 2022. It's a little bit different from previous years where we had a first team, a second team, and the futures. For 2022, we will have a senior training pool where our players will be pulled out of that pool to represent the club in a few different amateur competitions, the USL League Two, the US Open Cup, and the National Premier Soccer League. And the futures program will continue to have the 7v7 Futures League, as well as being the representative for the club in the UPSL. All players for Minneapolis City are local. We don't house any players. It's a 100% focused club on Minnesota-based players. And we've had several players move on from the amateur ranks into different professional levels within the United States. So we've had players move into NISA as well as MLS. So what is the Minneapolis City Futures program? So the Futures program is a competitive inter-club soccer environment designed to nurture young players for the demands of college, pro, and professionally amateur soccer without the typical cost and travel demands required by what is the soccer system in the United States. This is a program that we started just last year. It consisted of three different components: a pool training component, a 7v7 Futures League component, as well as a group that participated in 11v11 competition versus external opponents. And what we're seeing here is just a representation of what those results looked like for year one of the Futures program. So we played a few different UPSL clubs. We played a few different MLS programs, a couple different college clubs, as well as competed against our first team. And as you can see here, we fared fairly well. I think 7 wins and 1 loss for 2021. And then, as I mentioned, the Futures program also revolved around a 7v7 Futures League, where the players that were in the Futures were placed on one of 4 different 7v7 teams that represented a different Minneapolis neighborhood. So what we see here is kind of the culmination of that 7v7 Futures League, where these players were honored at halftime of one of the first team games last July. The winner of that league was the group that represented the Powderhorn neighborhood of Minneapolis. And then a few different honors here. So in terms of players, Jacob Popkin won the MVP. He was voted by his peers as the MVP of the league. Loic Masanvi, who has been tearing it up in the Minnesota State High School League this year as a senior. He was the Golden Boot winner. Evan Siefkin, who is now the starting goalkeeper as a freshman at St. John's. He won the Golden Glove. Logan McGee, a very talented defender, won the Golden Shield. Josh Wackerfuss was voted by his peers as most improved player. Josh is currently at Luther. A very unique aspect of the Futures League is that we leverage some of the talent and resources and knowledge that we have in terms of players in the senior pool who come down and help us out in terms of coaching and mentorship. And Jonah Garcia was voted as Mentor Coach of the Year last year. Jonah is also an assistant coach at Augsburg University. And then the Wingman Award was won by Victor Hernandez, who represented Riverside Rovers. So, who does the Futures program serve? So, it serves the top 50 Twin Cities based players aged 20 and under with aspirations to continue playing beyond their teenage years at the highest levels. And then these players may have one or more of the following characteristics. So, they require an accelerated environment that can prepare them for collegiate soccer. They desire a higher level of competition to augment their current club or high school environment. They have aged out of the Olympic development program. Um, they can potentially no longer afford or justify the cost to play high level competitive youth soccer, which can often reach upwards of $10,000 a year in terms of investment. They can't justify the time commitment to travel nationally for high level competitive soccer. They don't feel the traditional youth system offers them anything else to advance their development. They may be a late bloomer and they were just overlooked in the youth player identification process, and they're trying to regain traction. They might just be completely lost within the U.S. soccer system. Um, and they also might be talented young players who deserve a path into the Minneapolis City senior teams, but they still need time to develop. For 2022, we are going to change the age structure slightly. So players will be able to play within the futures as long as they are between the ages of 16 and 20 years old for the duration of the futures season. So they will have to be born after August 1st, 2001, and must be 16 years old before that player can step on the field, and that's a requirement for our club insurance purposes. So futures for 2022. So we are tweaking the futures program slightly as we enter 2022. Like I said, last year was the first year of the futures program. We learned a lot. We learned that many of the things worked well, and then we learned that some things need to be enhanced a bit. So as we enter 2022, there's going to be 4 different components or sections to the future season. So in November, we're going to start out with a futures trialist camp. And this is going to be the player identification session for what will be our winter session or winter season. And it's primarily focused on high school age players as well as players who may be beyond high school age, but they're living in the Twin Cities area, whether they're attending college, playing college, attending college, but not participating within a collegiate program, or they're just working in the area and they happen to be within our eligible age range. And then as we enter January, we will start our futures winter season, which will be largely based on what we did last year, where there'll be 2 different components to the futures winter season, actually 3. There'll be the pool training of those 50 players that we pull from the trial process. Those players will be separated into 4 different 7v7 teams to represent Minneapolis neighborhoods. And then there's going to be opportunities to participate in 11v11 matches against external competition. And that's going to be our futures winter season. And then I'm going to jump ahead to number 4 here. So our futures summer season is going to take place from April to July. And what we're going to do there is we're going to trim down the pool to a select group of about 30 rostered players that are going to participate in regular team training as well as compete in an adult national amateur league. And that would be the United Premier Soccer League that our second team participated in last year. And then jumping back to item number 3 that you see here, to be able to ensure that we can get some of those college players that may be out of town, out of the Twin Cities, and then returning for the summer. We'll be hosting some supplemental trial opportunities for those college players um, to, showcase their skills and potentially earn a spot into the future summer season roster. So a little bit more detail on the Futures winter season. So 40, 50 players are going to be selected into that winter season pool. Um, the training time and the league nights are going to be Monday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. That is the time at which we can actually get affordable um, facility space to ensure that we keep the cost of the program as low as possible. Uh, the Futures winter season is going to consist of 13 sessions from January to April. And it's going to be alternating between large group pool training as well as our 7v7 Futures League. Our 7v7 Futures League is going to be abbreviated in comparison to what we did last year, where we had 10 or 11 games as part of that Futures League. We're going to trim that down to 5 league matches where we're playing a round robin format, and then it will culminate in a championship finals week. The locations for the winter season are primarily going to be the Braemar Dome and Champions Hall in Edina, which are essentially across the interstate from each other. So Edina is going to be our home base for the Futures winter season. And then uh, as part of the winter season as well, there's going to be the potential for players to be able to be pulled into 11v11 matches versus external competition. And then the future summer season, which is going to take place from April to July, we're going to select a team roster of between 25 and 30 players. And those players are going to be selected from um, the Futures winter season, plus those supplemental trials that we're going to have for late arriving players or players that are returning from their college environments. And then that team is going to participate in the National League competition, which is the UPSL, which um, competes at the Division 4 on the U.S. soccer pyramid. And the league schedule is approximately 10 games plus playoffs. And then the team training is going to start off to be Monday nights from 9 to 11. And then as we get into the season, so we can accommodate a proper periodization schedule, we're going to be moving to Tuesday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. League matches for the UPSL are typically on the weekends. I think last year our second team had one midweek game, but they're primarily on Saturday and Sunday. And then the locations for training are going to be Braemar Dome, Champions Hall, and Edina. And then as we move kind of further into the warmer weather, so mid-May and beyond, we'll be outdoor, and we're um, focusing training at Parade Park in Minneapolis. And then in terms of travel, we're doing our best to keep this program as local as possible. The UPSL kind of helps us with that, as there is a pretty solid conference in the UPSL Midwest West Conference, where we're fortunate enough to have 6 teams in the Twin Cities area. The Granite City squad plays in St. Cloud. There's a Rochester team. And then there is one team that competes out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I believe our scheduling would bring our group on a road trip out to Sioux Falls in 2022. So here's a look at the calendar and kind of a Gantt chart type format. So if you read this from left to right and top down, in mid-November, so November 15th, we're going to start the Futures Trialist Camp, which will be up to 3 dates. It's going to be a little bit shorter than what we had last year, where we had 3 guaranteed dates with a fourth date that we brought everybody together, all the finalists together in one session. This year we're going to have session group A and session group B, and each of those session groups will participate in two camp days, and then we're going to bring the finalists from session group A uh, along with the finalists from session group B into one final session. And the trialist camp is targeted to be completed by December 1st, I believe. And then we're going to enter a holiday break. And during that holiday break, we'll also host some single day Minneapolis City Open trials for all ages. And that just ends up being just one more opportunity for players to kind of showcase their skills, or if they weren't able to make the Futures trialist camp, that's going to be a vehicle for them to get into our system as well. And then after that, we're going to select a pool of 50 players to compete in the Futures winter season. And then mid-January, we will kick off with winter season pool training for that large group pool. And as we get into late January and February, we will kick off our 7v7 Futures League, where those players will be divided up into 4 different teams representing different Minneapolis neighborhoods, and will compete in the 7v7 Futures League. As we enter March, we are going to be hosting one of those supplementary one-day trials for those college players that are coming back in town on March 19th. We've identified March 19th as the date that overlaps the majority of the college spring breaks in the region, so that's why we've targeted that particular date. And then there's also going to be the opportunity for players who have filled out our player interest form and have been reviewed by our sporting director to bring those players in to our winter season pool training on a limited basis, which would serve as one-day trials as well. And then once we get to the tail end of our winter season pool training, we'll be selecting a roster of about 30 players to fill out the team that's going to participate in the summer season, and specifically the UPSL League. And then the UPSL typically starts in early May and runs through early July. Our second team last year actually made it into the quarterfinals of the national playoffs, and that final game, I believe, was late July. So player benefits. So the Futures, it's a one-of-a-kind program. I don't personally know of any other program like this in the country, if not the world. Players can continue to play with their clubs, teams, their high school squads, and their college programs. The Futures has been designed to be an augmentation of their existing environments. For some players, it's a pure replacement, but for many players, they continue to participate in other environments as well. So it's purely a supplementary program. Players will get up to 8 months in a very high level training environment. We've had players players that have been in our senior group that have played on youth national teams, played professional, whether it's in Europe or in South America or North America, or competed at the highest levels of the amateur system within the U.S. For the Futures, players will be playing in a fast-paced, ultra-competitive 7v7 Winter League. That's the Futures League. You can see the different jerseys representing different Minneapolis neighborhoods right here. All games are going to be recorded with our VO artificial intelligence video system. Players will have access to all of those videos to create their own clips, download those videos if they need to create highlight videos, whether that's recruiting for college or for professional programs trying to get trials in those areas. VO is an incredible tool for us at the club. Those players that participate in the summer season will be playing in that National Adult Amateur Summer Competition, the UPSL. All the players in the Futures have the opportunity to be selected to feature and exhibition games. Players will get a Minneapolis City training kit. They will get a Futures League jersey. We have certified athletic trainers from Twin Cities Orthopedic at every single event. We take pride in taking care of our players. Those players will be getting guidance from our USSF licensed Minneapolis City coaching staff. They will also have access to player mentors from that Minneapolis City senior player pool. Many of those players are also coaches at the collegiate level. All the players within the Futures will get a club membership card, inclusive of flex tickets for first team games. They're going to be getting exposure to those college and semi-pro scouts. The program serves as an entry into a path into the senior teams within the USL2 or NPSL. Last year we had several, I'm not going to say several, but a handful of players who got minutes on the first team, and then several more who got minutes playing with the second team. We're going to have stats and rosters, so we'll have visibility for players on the Minneapolis City website. We do all of our team communication through TeamSnap, and then very limited travel. It's almost entirely local, with the exception of, I think, the one road trip to Sioux Falls next year. Everything is either in the Twin Cities or at a minimum within the state of Minnesota. And the Futures is an excellent opportunity to make some magical memories, forge new relationships with other players, and do something remarkable together. So the costs for the Futures program for 2022, we've been able to lower the cost for the trialist camp. So the trialist camp is going to be a $99 fee. And those players will have up to 3 indoor player identification sessions which are going to be hosted at Braemar Field in Edina. The winter season, which is the winter large group pool training, as well as the 7v7 Futures League and any exhibition games in which we are able to schedule during that time period. That's going to be $599 per player. And then the summer season, which is going to be that group of 30 players who are selected to the UPSL team roster, that's going to be a $599 investment as well. What's really, really important to note here is that we, through donations from the club members, what we did last year, different fundraising opportunities, and then other subsidies we've been able to leverage from within the club, we have scholarships available for at least 20% of the players that participate in the Futures. And we did that last year, and we will continue to do that going forward. For those players who want to seek out whether or not they're eligible for those scholarships, they can contact us at Futures at mplscitysc.com, and we can provide you that financial aid application. Those applications are reviewed by our scholarship committee every 2 weeks during kind of the run up to our trials. So how to join the Futures. So what does that look like? So in November, as I mentioned previously, we are going to have our trialist camp, which is going to be the primary avenue for players to get into the Futures program. We're going to separate it across 2 groups. We're going to have Group A, which is going to participate in trials on November 15th and November 22nd, and then Group B, which will participate in trials on Tuesday, November 16th and November 23rd. And then we're going to bring the finalists from Group A and Group B together into one last evaluation session on Monday, November 29th. And all those sessions are going to be from 9 to 11 p.m. at Braemar Field in Edina. Players can register now at mplscitysc.com/futures. So go to the Minneapolis City Soccer Club website and click into the Futures page, and you'll be able to get into the registration process that way. So We're also going to be hosting some supplemental mechanisms for players to get into the futures. During the winter, we've traditionally had a few different all ages open trials. So futures age players have the ability to participate in those trial days as well. The plan is to have one in December. The date has not yet been defined yet, as well as one in January. But for players who cannot participate in November, whether they're not in town or the schedule doesn't work for them, they can find an avenue into the futures via our winter all ages open trials as well. And then in the spring, we're going to have a few different opportunities for players who are returning from their collegiate environments. Um, we will have a spring break trial day on Saturday, March 19th. The location is yet to be determined. And then we'll also be inviting um, uh, players into our training sessions on Monday, April 11th, as well as Monday, April 18th, and that kind of aligns with the Easter holiday break as well. So for those players, it's very important for those players to go to the Minneapolis City Futures webpage as well, and then click on the link that's going to take you to our player interest form, and that will allow you to get into our system to receive any information regarding these upcoming trial opportunities. The November session, the November Trialist Camp, is going to serve as the primary avenue to get into the futures. I would speculate that of the 50 players that are going to be selected for the winter season, um, 40 to 45 of those players are going to be coming from the November Trialist Camp. And then we're going to leave a few of those spots open for the winter season for players that might come in through the open trial process. And then as we get into the spring and work our way towards selecting the top 30 players for our UPSL team roster for that summer season, we're going to be evaluating players throughout the winter season, as well as those players who are returning from their college environments, and then integrating those two into what would be our final 30 for the future summer season. There's always questions. If you need to know more, you can speak with any member of our staff. I'm Jeremiah Johnson. I'm the Director of Youth Development and the Futures Head Coach. You can also reach out to Adam Pribble, who is our General Manager, John Bisworm, who's our Sporting Director, our Assistant Coaches for the Futures, Eli Baker or Brendan Doyle, or you can also reach out to Matt Van Benscoten, who is our first team head coach as well. All of us listed on this page, we all have other careers, but we're all checking our email addresses fairly frequently for the club. So feel free to reach out to us that way as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking the time.